The Duke of Ravensmere had come to Alderwick to choose a wife. Everyone already knew which sister it would be. Cecily Harcourt was beautiful, obedient, and dressed that morning in the pearls his mother had sent. Elinor stood behind her, fastening the clasp as she had spent half her life fastening other people into the futures chosen for them. But inside Elinor's prayer book lay a one-way ticket to York. Cecily saw it just as the Duke's carriage stopped below. "When were you going to tell me?" Elinor met her sister's frightened eyes in the mirror. "The morning after your betrothal," she said. "When I was already gone." For a moment, Cecily did not move. Beyond the windows, iron-rimmed wheels ground over pale gravel. A footman called from the steps. Somewhere below, their father demanded that the west drawing-room curtains be opened. Although Elinor had ordered it done an hour earlier, Cecily looked down at the ticket. "York." "Yes." "How long have you been planning it?" 6 months. The answer wounded Cecily more deeply than anger might have done. "You knew this marriage was being arranged before then?" "Yes, and you waited until the morning after my betrothal to leave." At first, Elinor had intended to remain until Cecily was settled at Ravensmere, then until Christmas, then until their father's accounts were restored to order. But Elinor understood the danger of postponement. Her life had already been delayed in increments so reasonable that no one had noticed she had never begun living it. "You will not be alone," she said. "You will have a husband, a household, and your own position." Cecily's expression changed. "Is that what you believe I want?" Before Elinor could answer, the door opened. The housekeeper stood on the threshold, flushed from climbing the stairs. "Miss Harcourt, His Grace has arrived." Her eyes went first to Cecily. Everyone's eyes went first to Cecily. Then she turned to Elinor. "And the Duchess's maid says the blue chamber has been prepared instead of the rose chamber. Mr. Harcourt wishes you to correct it immediately." "Of course." Elinor returned the ticket to the prayer book. "We must go downstairs." Cecily caught her wrist. "You have not answered me." Below them, the great front doors opened. Elinor gently removed her sister's hand. "Neither of us has time for the answer now." That, Elinor thought as she left the room, was the problem with answers. Someone always needed something more urgently. Marcus Ashford, 8th Duke of Ravensmere, entered Alderwick Hall, with rain darkening the shoulders of his coat. He was 34, taller than Elinor had expected, and less severe than his portrait suggested. Weariness showed faintly beside his eyes, but his expression remained composed as Mr. Harcourt welcomed him with more enthusiasm than dignity. Behind Marcus came his mother, the Dowager Duchess, accompanied by her maid, 2 footmen, and enough luggage to suggest that 21 days at Alderwick required preparation for every possible season. Cecily descended the staircase. Conversation stopped. Even Elinor understood the silence. Cecily did not merely possess beauty. She possessed the kind that made other people believe they had already understood her. Marcus bowed. "Miss Harcourt, Your Grace." Cecily performed the curtsy Elinor had practiced with her the previous evening. Perfect depth, perfect balance, perfect stillness. Elinor alone saw her fingers whiten around her fan. Their father began the introductions. When he reached Elinor, a footman whispered that one of the Duchess's cases had been taken to the wrong room. Elinor excused herself before Marcus could do more than turn toward her. She corrected the rooms, found a missing coal scuttle, ordered dry towels for the coachman, and stopped the kitchen from serving the Dowager Duchess a sauce containing walnuts, after learning that they made her Grace ill. When Elinor returned, tea had been poured, and everyone had formed the arrangement society preferred. Marcus sat beside Cecily. The Dowager Duchess occupied the best chair by the fire. Mr. Harcourt stood before the mantel, speaking as if Alderwick's cracked south wall and mortgaged fields were proof of ancestral magnificence. "Cecily has overseen every preparation herself," he said. Cecily looked at Elinor. Elinor gave the smallest shake of her head. There was no need to embarrass their father over a harmless compliment, but the compliment was not harmless. It was simply familiar. Marcus followed Cecily's glance. "Then I am indebted to you," Miss Harcourt, my mother's comfort has been considered with remarkable care. I cannot claim all the credit, Cecily said. Cecily is modest. Their father replied. The Dowager Duchess lifted her teacup. She may be modest, but someone in this house possesses an excellent memory. Few hosts remember my unfortunate disagreement with walnuts. Marcus looked from Cecily to Elinor. I fear I was not properly introduced. He crossed the room. And you are Elinor Harcourt, the elder sister, by 4 years, and the architect of my mother's comfort, only of her source. Your Grace, the architect of her comfort is carrying 3 trunks up the east staircase. The Dowager Duchess laughed. Marcus almost did. The housekeeper signalled from the doorway. Elinor stood. You are leaving again, Marcus observed. The candles for dinner have not arrived. Does Alderwick cease to function whenever you sit down? No, it merely becomes more interesting. This time Marcus smiled. At dinner, Cecily sat beside him, wearing pale blue silk, and the expression of a woman listening to a sermon she'd been told would improve her character. Marcus asked whether she enjoyed riding. Very much. Elinor knew Cecily had not ridden since falling from a pony at 14. He asked whether she preferred London or the country. I am happy in either. Cecily had wept for 2 weeks during her only London season. He asked if she liked music. Whatever music your Grace prefers. Marcus accepted each answer with courteous attention. He did not understand that Cecily had been trained to treat agreement as goodness. At the other end of the table, Mr. Harcourt was assuring the Dowager Duchess that Alderwick's western farms remained highly productive. Elinor knew 2 fields had failed, and a 3rd had been pledged against a loan. Then Cecily's breathing changed. Marcus was describing the public ceremonies expected of his wife. London, winter assemblies, and hundreds of strangers who would watch every movement and call their scrutiny an honour. Elinor spoke across the table. Your Grace, I understand Ravensmere has begun restoring its northern cottages. Marcus turned. The question redirected him long enough for Cecily to breathe. They discussed drainage, transport, and the difficulty of finding craftsmen before winter. Marcus neither patronized Elinor nor offered exaggerated praise when she understood him. He simply answered, questioned, and occasionally disagreed. It was the most natural conversation at the table. It was also the first time Cecily appeared comfortable. After dinner, the Dowager Duchess found Elinor near the window, while Cecily played the pianoforte. You have trained her very well, the older woman said. My sister had an excellent music master. I did not mean the music. She watches you before answering, as though you hold the approved version of every thought. I only help when she is uncertain. Perhaps being indispensable is a dangerous occupation, Miss Harcourt. People rarely notice it has become imprisonment until the prisoner attempts to leave. Elinor felt the hidden ticket as though it was still in her hand. Later that night, Cecily entered Elinor's room carrying the prayer book. You intended to vanish, she said. I intended to depart without telling father. He would stop me without telling me. You would ask me to stay. Would that be so terrible? Yes. The answer startled them both. If I remain until everyone is ready to lose me, Elinor said more gently, I shall remain forever. But after I marry, who will look after father and Alderwick and me? There it was, not cruelty, something harder to resist, because it had been spoken with love. You will learn. Cecily's grief hardened. You arranged my entire future, then decided yours need not include me. You will have a husband and household of your own. Is that what you think I want? Or merely what you have made possible? For the first time, Elinor wondered whether no one had asked Cecily what she wanted, because Elinor had always answered first. The following morning was clear enough for a walk through the southern gardens. Marcus offered Cecily his arm. Elinor followed at the distance propriety required of a chaperone, near enough to hear and far enough to pretend she did not. Your father tells me you are fond of roses, Marcus said. Cecily looked toward Elinor. Elinor kept her eyes on the path. Yes, Cecily said. What variety do you prefer? The red ones. Marcus glanced at the pale autumn roses lining the wall. A comprehensive answer. Cecily could not determine whether he was teasing. Elinor intervened. The Gallica roses survive our winters best. Marcus looked back. I asked Miss Cecily. The correction was mild, but heat rose in Elinor's face. I prefer the pale ones, Cecily said quickly. They were my mother's favourites. It was the first personal thing she had told him. Marcus's expression softened. Then I am glad I asked twice. At the garden gate, a tenant named Mr. Bell waited with his cap twisting between his hands. The roof over his children's room had collapsed in the night. No one was hurt, but their father had ignored his earlier petition. Elinor ordered timber released from an old dairy and sent for the village carpenter. Marcus listened as she found payment in Alderwick's winter entertainment account. I can send men from Ravensmere, he said. On whose account? Mine. Then Mr. Bell would owe gratitude to a duke he has never met, and my father would avoid understanding why his steward ignored the warning. His children would also be dry tonight. Elinor disliked him for being right, and herself for needing him to be. Send the men. Alderwick will pay the cost. There may be no need. There is every need. You object strongly to receiving help. I object to debts whose terms are concealed beneath generosity. Not every kindness is a bargain. No, but women are often informed of the price after accepting it. Something shifted in his face, not offense, but recognition. Then you shall receive an invoice, he said, and I shall see that it is paid. That afternoon, Marcus joined the sisters in the music room. He asked Cecily whether she wished to live mainly in London. I shall be content wherever your grace prefers, and if I have no preference, then wherever your mother prefers. Elinor's pen stopped. Cecily has always disliked London. Her sister turned sharply. Marcus looked between them. Is that true? Elinor prepared to explain, but Cecily spoke first. His Grace asked me. The rebuke was soft but unmistakable. Yes, Cecily continued. I dislike London. The crowds exhaust me, and I do not enjoy being watched by people who have already decided what they see. Marcus considered this. Then we should not make London our principal home. Is it so easily settled? No, but neither is it impossible. A fragile hope appeared in Cecily's face. Elinor felt ashamed. By speaking for her, she had prevented Cecily from discovering whether Marcus might listen. Later, Elinor met Marcus in the portrait gallery while carrying household accounts. What will you do after your sister is married? He asked. No one had asked her directly. Something no one here has arranged for me. And where will this unarranged life occur? That would be a second question. Do elder daughters limit dukes to one? The prudent ones do. She moved past him. An account book slipped. Marcus caught it. But her prayer book fell and opened on the carpet. The ticket slid against his boot. He picked it up and read the destination and date. York, the morning after the proposed betrothal. Elinor held out her hand. After one suspended moment, he returned it. York is a long journey for someone expected nowhere. Elinor closed her fingers around the ticket. I am expected, only not here. She left Marcus beneath her mother's portrait, with the first fact he had learned about her, that no one else had arranged for him to know. Marcus did not ask about York the next morning. He waited until afternoon, when he found Elinor in the estate office copying figures into a smaller ledger of her own. You were wrong yesterday, he said. About which of my many offences? You said I had exhausted my questions. And have you come to appeal the ruling? He placed an envelope beside her hand. The return direction belonged to a solicitor in York. It had been delivered with his correspondence by mistake. Elinor turned it face down. I did not open it. You expect congratulations, only the absence of accusation. His restraint unsettled her more than interrogation might have done. Mrs. Lydia Wren is an acquaintance of my late aunt, she said at last. She is a widow. We have leased a townhouse near Bootham for residence and business, respectable rooms for women who have sufficient income to live independently, but not enough to maintain an entire household. Widows, unmarried women, and governesses between situations. Marcus looked at the figures. You intend to keep a lodging house. I intend to own part of one. The distinction mattered. He heard that it mattered. And your father agreed. My aunt's legacy is mine. That was not my question. Then you already know the answer. Marcus walked to the window. You have arranged employment, investment, and residence without speaking of it to your family. Had I spoken before signing, they would have turned a decision into a debate, and a debate into a refusal. It is not entirely secure, less secure than marrying a man one scarcely knows. He faced her. Neither mentioned Cecily. Elinor closed the ledger. Mrs. Wren has already begun. My room is waiting. So is my work. You say that as though being expected were proof of belonging. It is more proof than anyone here has offered. That evening, Cecily stopped midway through a piece of music. Her hands remained above the keys, trembling. I cannot marry him, she said. Elinor shut the drawing room door. Has he behaved improperly? No. Has he frightened you? No. Then what happened? Nothing happened. That is the difficulty. He is honorable and courteous. He listens when I manage to speak. I wish that made me want him. Elinor sat beside her. We can delay the announcement. You have not been sleeping well. A physician could advise. No. If father believes the delay concerns your health. No. Elinor. Cecily rose. You are doing it again. I am trying to protect you by inventing a reason more acceptable than mine. Father will not accept that you simply do not want the marriage. Then he must refuse me himself. I will not hide behind illness while you arrange another path. Elinor lowered her voice. You do not understand what he may say, because you have always stood between us before I could hear it. I stood there because mother was gone and you were 15. I am 25 now. The words landed with the force of a door closing. Cecily's anger broke into grief. You complain that everyone has made you responsible for us, but you have also made certain that we cannot act without you. Elinor stared at her. When was the last time you asked what I wanted before deciding what I needed? Cecily asked. Elinor searched her memory and found only examples of questions she had answered on Cecily's behalf. I love you, she said. I know, but sometimes your love feels exactly like father's authority, only kinder. Cecily left before Elinor could defend herself. Marcus stood in the shadow beyond the partly open door. He had heard enough to understand, and too much to pretend otherwise. Elinor's humiliation sharpened. Do dukes frequently listen at drawing-room doors? Only when approaching them. Then you may congratulate yourself. You have discovered that competence is merely another form of tyranny. I discovered nothing of the kind. She tried to pass him. Miss Harcourt, do not tell me she did not mean it. She meant it. Elinor stopped. Marcus's voice was quiet. And she loves you. Both may be true. How generous of you to confirm my failings. You carry everyone so efficiently that no one notices when you begin choosing the road. Perhaps you do not notice either. She turned on him. And what would you know of choosing roads for others? The question struck deeper than she intended. Marcus looked toward the music room, enough to know that obedience can resemble consent when one benefits from the mistake. The following day, Cecily requested a private conversation with him. Elinor did not ask what she meant to say. She did not wait outside the door. She went to the dairy accounts and forced herself to remain there. An hour later, Cecily entered the office. I told him I could not promise affection, and he asked whether I wanted the betrothal announced. What did you say? No. Elinor's breath escaped. He said I must tell our families before tomorrow's dinner. He will support me, but he will not speak for me. Cecily looked terrified. Elinor rose instinctively. She stopped. Cecily waited. Elinor forced her hands to remain at her sides. What do you need from me? Her sister's face crumpled with relief. Stand beside me, she whispered. Not in front. The formal dinner was intended to end with an announcement. The Ravensmere ring waited in a velvet box beside Marcus's plate. Mr. Harcourt had ordered the oldest wine opened. The Dowager Duchess wore diamonds that had belonged to 3 generations of women whose marriages had been called successful because they endured them quietly. Cecily ate nothing. When the servants withdrew and Mr. Harcourt lifted his glass, she stood. Her chair scraped the floor. Every face turned. "Before father speaks," she said, "there is something I must say." Mr. Harcourt lowered his glass. "Sit down, Cecily." She looked at Elinor. Elinor did not rise. She held her sister's gaze and gave one small nod. Cecily turned to Marcus. "Your Grace has treated me with greater consideration than I expected. That makes what I must say more difficult, not less." Marcus remained still. "I cannot marry you." Their father's glass struck the table. Cecily's voice shook. "I cannot promise you a willing wife merely because I have been trained to resemble one." Silence followed. Not the admiring silence her beauty usually created, but the kind that threatened to punish whoever broke it. Mr. Harcourt broke it first. "You foolish child. Do you understand what you have done?" "I understand what I cannot do." "You understand nothing." Elinor nearly rose. Cecily's hand tightened against the table, and Elinor remained seated. Their father looked at Marcus. "Your Grace, she is frightened." Young women often confuse fear with conviction. "Cecily has been very clear," Marcus said, "because someone has filled her head with independence." His eyes moved to Elinor. "No," Cecily said. "Elinor tried to help me avoid saying this. I insisted." Elinor felt the justice of the statement and its sting. Mr. Harcourt's composure failed. He spoke of Alderwick's debts, the failed harvests, the mortgage, the loan due at Christmas, and the families whose cottages and work depended upon the estate. The settlement would have allowed the debt to be restructured, he said. Your mother's home might have survived. Do you believe freedom remains noble when 30 families lose theirs with it? Cecily went white. For the first time, Marcus looked not at a reluctant bride, but at a daughter being handed the weight of an estate and told it was the price of saying no. He closed the velvet box. The proposed marriage was never a contract for the purchase of Alderwick. Mr. Harcourt flushed. I did not suggest. You suggested precisely that. Although perhaps desperation has made the language appear kinder to you. Marcus stood. Miss Cecily never promised affection. I saw obedience and found it convenient to call it agreement. The fault is not hers alone. He looked around the table. There will be no announcement. There will also be no whisper from Ravensmere that Miss Cecily behaved dishonorably. If society requires an explanation, it may be told that I released her. Cecily's chin lifted. I would prefer it be told that I refused. Marcus studied her, then inclined his head. As you wish. It cost her something to accept the scandal. Rather than hide behind his protection, Elinor saw that cost and, for once, did not try to pay it for her. Later, Elinor found Marcus alone in the library, turning the unopened ring box in his hand. You were kind to her, she said. No. Kindness would have required me to ask what she wanted before arriving with a ring. Most men would have blamed her. Most men benefit from calling an avoidable injury a woman's ingratitude. She did not know what to say. Marcus placed the box in a drawer. You did not intervene, he observed. I nearly did, but you did not. That is a poor achievement for someone accustomed to rescuing others before they ask. Perhaps it is not. Their eyes met. Gratitude shifted into something warmer and more dangerous. The door opened. The Dowager Duchess entered, saw them together, and stopped. Her gaze moved from Marcus to Elinor with the unsettling speed of a woman rearranging an entire future. Perhaps, she said slowly, Ravensmere has been looking at the wrong sister. Elinor felt the warmth vanish. Your Grace mistakes me, she said. I do not. You understand estates. You command respect without demanding it. You have steadied this house for years. Ravensmere has lacked precisely such a woman. Every sentence sounded like praise. Every sentence described a service. Then Ravensmere requires a capable steward. Elinor replied, not a duchess. She left before either could stop her. Marcus remained in the library, disturbed by his mother's presumption, and more disturbed that the thought of marrying Elinor no longer felt like presumption at all. The failed betrothal did not bring peace to Alderwick. It brought letters. Some expressed sympathy. Others offered advice no one had requested. One informed Mr. Harcourt that an unmarried daughter who rejected a duke ought not expect a second invitation from respectable society. Marcus instructed his secretary to answer the most damaging rumours. Cecily answered one herself. Elinor watched her sister seal the letter. You need not respond to everyone. I know. What did you write? That I declined an honour I could not accept honestly, and that I would rather be thought foolish than become dishonest for life. Elinor smiled despite herself. You are becoming formidable. It is inconvenient. Most worthwhile qualities are. The sisters were not entirely reconciled. Affection had returned before ease. Cecily now asked for help, rather than waiting for Elinor to decide. And Elinor was learning that a request could be considered instead of immediately obeyed. Marcus, meanwhile, found reasons to consult Elinor. At first, the reasons were legitimate. The cancelled announcement affected contracts with musicians and caterers. Guests had to be discouraged without confirming gossip. A tenant meeting had been scheduled during his visit, and Mr. Harcourt was too ashamed to attend. Elinor and Marcus worked together, because work remained the one language neither feared. He learned that she tapped one finger against a ledger when a figure troubled her. She learned that he became more formal when uncertain. He knew she took tea without sugar. She knew he reread every difficult letter before answering it, as if searching for the most honourable response among several equally painful ones. One rainy afternoon, they stood in the archive room, looking for an old boundary agreement. The shelves were narrow, the light poor. Elinor reached for the same document as Marcus, and his hand closed over hers. Neither moved. She became aware of rain against the window, dust in the lamplight, and the warmth of his fingers. Marcus lifted his other hand, as though he meant to touch the loose curl beside her cheek. He stopped before doing so. The restraint unsettled her more than a kiss might have done. Why did you come here? She asked. His hand lowered. For the boundary agreement. You passed your secretary on the stairs. He knew where it was. Marcus looked at the paper between them. Did you come to see me? Elinor asked. Or because something at Alderwick required solving? The pause was brief. It was also answer enough. Elinor withdrew her hand. You make it difficult to separate the two, he said. Then perhaps you should learn. 3 days later, Marcus asked Elinor to walk with him in the winter garden. The rain had ended, leaving water bright upon the bare branches. She knew before he spoke that he had prepared something. My mother was wrong in the library, he began. I am relieved one of you noticed. She had no right to speak as she did, but the conclusion itself was not entirely wrong. Elinor's heartbeat changed. Marcus faced her. I have admired your judgment from the first day. You possess courage, discipline, and an understanding of responsibility that few people acquire in a lifetime. Ravensmere would be stronger with you in it. Every word was generous. Every word tightened something around her chest. You would have authority over the household and charitable accounts. My mother respects you. The tenants would trust you. You would never again be required to worry about money or security. And York, he hesitated. The investment could be retained. Naturally, Mrs. Wren might manage the establishment without me. Your position would make daily involvement difficult. My position. Marcus took a breath. Elinor, will you marry me? For one treacherous instant, she wanted to say yes. She imagined waking without anxiety over bills. She imagined speaking to Marcus across a breakfast table, arguing with him over cottages, making him smile when he intended to remain grave. She imagined being chosen at last. Then she heard what he had actually offered: a larger house to manage, more people to rescue, a grander title for the same invisible labor. If I were useless to you, she asked, would you still know why you wanted me? His brow tightened. You could never be useless. That was not the question. It is not a question that makes sense. It is the only one that matters. She stepped closer. though her instinct was to flee. "What do I enjoy when no one requires anything from me?" Marcus said nothing. "What frightened me when I was a child? Why did I choose York? What do I hope to build there beyond a respectable investment? What part of myself do I conceal when I am efficient? You have never told me. You have never asked." Pain entered his expression. "I know enough to respect you." "Yes, you respect what I can do." "My father does too. Cecily does. Your mother most certainly does. And you believe that is all I feel. I believe you came to marry one Harcourt sister because she appeared suitable. When she refused, you looked at the other and discovered a different kind of suitability. That is unjust. Then tell me who I am when Ravensmere requires nothing from me." He could not. Elinor's eyes burned, but she would not look away. "I once believed the greatest sorrow was never being chosen. I was wrong. There is something worse being chosen because one is useful, and being told usefulness is love." Elinor. No, it was the smallest word she had spoken. It was also the first that belonged entirely to her. She left him in the winter garden. Marcus did not follow. That night, he sat alone in Alderwick's library and reviewed every reason he had offered her. Authority, security, respect, a household that needed her, an estate she could improve. He had believed he was offering freedom from service. Instead, he had offered a more prestigious form of it. He tried to find one sentence in his proposal that proved he had seen Elinor apart from what she could do. There was none. The next morning brought a new injury. Mr. Harcourt had discovered the York papers. He could not legally seize his daughter's legacy, but he had written to the local bank disputing the release of funds until the terms of her aunt's will were examined. The delay alone could cause Elinor to lose the lease. "You went through my desk," Elinor said. Her father stood behind his own desk, pale with anger and fear. "I found evidence that my daughter intended to abandon this family in the middle of ruin. I made the investment before the betrothal failed. Then you planned to abandon us in the middle of Cecily's marriage. There would always have been a reason I was required to stay. Because you are required." The words hung between them. Mr. Harcourt mistook her silence for surrender. "Accept Ravensmere. You care for him. Anyone can see it. You would save Alderwick and secure Cecily's future. For once, all your obligations point toward the same sensible choice." Elinor understood then that even her love could be used as evidence against her freedom. "No," she said again. By afternoon, the family had assembled in the morning room without calling it an intervention. Mr. Harcourt stood by the fire. Cecily occupied the sofa, twisting a handkerchief. The Dowager Duchess sat upright beside her. Marcus remained near the door, his expression unreadable. Elinor stopped on the threshold. "Which part of my life have you gathered to arrange?" Her father ignored the question. "Your York funds have been delayed, not denied. There is still time to reconsider. Reconsider York or the Duke. They have become the same decision." The Dowager Duchess spoke gently. "No one wishes to compel you, but Ravensmere would grant you influence. Few women possess it. Influence over whom? The household, the villages, our charitable work. More people who would need me. People whose lives you could improve." Elinor looked at Marcus. "And do you agree?" He stepped forward. "I believe there may be a way to preserve your York investment while allowing... He stopped. Cecily rose. "Elinor, I know you think I want to keep you here. Perhaps I did, but I do not want you to refuse happiness, because my decision caused all this. You believe marrying Marcus would make me happy. I believe you love him." That truth entered the room like a blade. Elinor looked at Marcus. "Love is not the question." Her father struck the mantel with his palm. "Then what is? You have before you affection, rank, security, and the means to save your home. What more can any rational woman demand?" Elinor reached to the ring of keys at her waist. For 14 years she had carried the key to the pantry. the linen room, the medicine cabinet, the estate office, and every locked drawer containing a problem others preferred not to see. She placed the ring on the table. "What are you doing?" her father asked. "Giving back what belongs to Alderwick." She set down the estate ledger beside it. "The tenant accounts are current through Michaelmas. Mr. Hell knows which roofs require repair. The winter stores have been ordered. The household wages are listed by date." She handed Cecily a smaller book. "These are the arrangements for the remaining guests. You may change them as you wish." Cecily stared at it. "I do not know how." "Neither did I until I learned. You cannot simply stop," their father said. Elinor looked at him. "That is what everyone has relied upon." She left the room without taking the keys. Alderwick did not collapse. For the first 2 days, it merely became inconvenient. Mr. Harcourt discovered that the steward had postponed 3 repairs and hidden a 4th. Cecily learned that ordering dinner required decisions no one praised. A supplier demanded payment, and for the first time, the demand went to the person who had incurred the debt, instead of the daughter who usually found a way to soften it. Elinor did not refuse every request. She refused the assumption that each request belonged to her. When Cecily asked how to calculate the linen order, Elinor showed her once and left her to finish. When her father demanded that she attend a meeting with the bank, she told him the loan bore his signature. When the housekeeper brought a quarrel between 2 maids, Elinor asked which rule the housekeeper believed fair. Slowly, painfully, the people around her began making decisions. It should have made Elinor feel triumphant. Instead, it exposed the fear beneath her resentment. If Alderwick could function without her, perhaps she had not been indispensable. If she was not indispensable, she did not know what had made her worthy of love. Cecily found her crying in the empty schoolroom where they had studied as girls. Elinor wiped her face impatiently. "I am not ill. I did not ask whether you were." Cecily sat beside her. "They are managing," Elinor said. "Poorly. But managing, yes." Elinor looked down at her hands. "I thought that was what I wanted. Perhaps it is. Wanting freedom does not mean the first taste of it cannot hurt." Elinor gave a broken laugh. "When did you become wise?" "Sometime between refusing a duke and ordering 6 hams instead of 2. They laughed together, and the sound mended something explanation could not. That evening, a letter arrived from York. Unless Elinor's money reached Mrs. Wren by Friday, the house would be offered to another tenant. There were no explanations worth reading twice. Her father had raised a doubt. The bank had obeyed the doubt. Friday would end it. Marcus found her in the morning room with the letter open beneath her hand. "I heard what happened," he said. Elinor looked up sharply. "What have you done?" "Nothing." She searched his face for the remainder of the sentence. "I have not written to the bank," he continued. "I have not offered my name, my money, or my assurance. I came to ask what authority, if any, you will permit me." The question unsettled her more than another rescue would have done. "You expect praise for doing nothing?" "No, I expect an answer only if you choose to give one." Elinor looked again at Friday in Mrs. Wren's hand. Part of her wanted Marcus to know without being told. But silence was not freedom if she turned it into a test. He could only fail. "You may give me the name of an independent solicitor," she said. "No one connected to Ravensmere or Alderwick." "Very well. He will take instructions from me. I will pay him. You may confirm facts if he asks you directly, but you will not guarantee the money. Replace it, borrow it, or speak in my name." Marcus held her gaze. "I understand. You are not asking me to abandon you. You are asking me to leave the decision in your hands." For once, he had heard the difference. "Yes," she said. "Then that is what I shall do." He left without touching the York letter. Elinor remained beside the table, staring at the door. Marcus had seen the danger, possessed the power to erase it, and asked before moving. It was not a declaration. It frightened her more than one, because it gave trust somewhere real to begin. Marcus prepared to return to Ravensmere the following morning, Elinor learned of his departure from her footman and hated the disappointment that followed. She had told him to do nothing. Some irrational part of her had expected him to understand that nothing did not mean leaving. But Marcus had finally stopped treating her words as obstacles to be interpreted into permission. Before leaving Alderwick, he met Mr. Harcourt before witnesses in the morning room. Mr. Harcourt had prepared a solution of his own. "Cecily has refused you," he said. "Elinor has not. Change the bride and the agreement survives." Marcus allowed the ugliness of the proposal to remain in the room. "Lady Cecily's freedom will not be purchased with her sister's hand," he said, "and Miss Harcourt will not become my wife, because she is useful to either of us." Mr. Harcourt's face hardened. "Then you mean to ruin us for the sake of principle? Alderwick will face its debts. Your daughters will not." Marcus released Cecily from the marriage agreement and left Mr. Harcourt to answer for what remained. Marcus did not send Elinor an account of what he had done. The independent solicitor challenged the delay. Before Friday, Elinor's own money reached York. Marcus supplied one fact when asked and nothing more. He neither paid the fee nor placed his name above hers. 3 days before Elinor's departure, the Dowager Duchess came to her room. Elinor's trunk stood open. Her gowns appeared modest beside the elaborate clothes her Grace had brought to Alderwick. "I owe you an apology," the Duchess said. Elinor waited. "I thought I recognized your value more quickly than the others. In truth, I merely recognized how useful you would be to my son. You meant kindness. Intent is a comfortable shelter. I have lived beneath it too often." The Duchess carried no list, no introduction, and no offer disguised as a gift. "Marcus told you to come?" Elinor asked. "Marcus told me to stop trying to keep you." The Duchess moved toward the door, then paused. "Ravensmere does need a woman like you. That is precisely why you should not marry into it, until we learn to need less." After she left, Elinor sat beside the open trunk and wept, without entirely understanding whether the tears came from grief, relief, or being seen at last by someone willing to release her. The evening before her departure, Marcus returned. He did not seek Elinor immediately. He asked a footman when the York coach departed. Elinor found him in the entrance hall holding her prayer book. "You left this in the library," he said. "The ticket remained inside. I thought you had gone." "I did. And now I have returned your book." She waited for a plea. None came. "My father says Alderwick will not be lost. It will change. Because of you. Because your father must now surrender what the estate can no longer afford. Neither daughter is part of the price." "Why did you not tell me?" "Because you asked me not to act in your name. Alderwick's debt belonged to your father. I required him to face it in his own." It was such a precise distinction that Elinor almost smiled. "You are learning." Painfully, the silence between them contained everything he did not ask her to reconsider. "Will you come to the coach-yard?" she asked. Hope entered his face, controlled but unmistakable. "If you wish it." "I do." Dawn came pale and cold. Elinor's trunks were strapped behind the York coach. "Mrs." Wren's final letter rested in her reticule. Cecily stood beside her, trying not to cry. Mr. Harcourt had said farewell at Alderwick, still unable to bless a decision he could no longer prevent. Marcus waited near the coach door. He had not brought flowers. He had brought the prayer book. "You returned that last night," Elinor said. "You left it in the carriage from Alderwick. Apparently freedom makes me careless. A dangerous development." Cecily embraced her sister. "Write when you arrive." "I will. And if you hate it." Elinor looked at the waiting coach. "Then I shall choose something else." The answer made them both smile. Cecily stepped away, leaving Elinor and Marcus with the few moments remaining. "I once believed love meant making a place for someone in my life," Marcus said. "I did not understand that it must begin by leaving her life in her own hands." Elinor's throat tightened. "Is this another proposal?" "No." The answer hurt and healed in equal measure. "What is it?" "The truth," offered without a request attached. The guard called for passengers. Elinor placed one gloved hand on the coach rail, then looked back. And if I say no forever, Marcus did not look away, then York remains yours. Your money remains yours. Your name remains yours. Alderwick's agreement remains unchanged. Nothing I have done will be withdrawn, and nothing you owe me will be invented afterward. There was the answer she had sought in the winter garden, not a declaration that she could never be useless, but proof that she could offer him nothing and still be treated with care. Goodbye, Marcus. It was the first time she had used his Christian name. His composure nearly broke. Goodbye, Elinor. She entered the coach. He did not reach for the door. He did not command the driver to wait. He stood beside Cecily as the wheels began to move and allowed the distance to open. Elinor watched him through the glass until the road curved and Alderwick disappeared. Then she faced forward. York did not welcome her with music or sunlight. It welcomed her with rain, a leaking window, and a dispute between Mrs. Wren and a plasterer, who insisted the dining room ceiling had always leaned at that angle. Elinor laughed for the first time in hours. Mrs. Lydia Wren was 50, brisk, warm-eyed, and unimpressed by titles. She embraced Elinor, placed a ring of 3 keys in her hand, and said, "These open your room, the accounts desk, and the front door. None opens another person's life. We shall try to remember the distinction." Elinor made mistakes. She ordered too little coal, trusted the wrong roofer, and spent 3 nights correcting accounts because she had refused to admit fatigue. Mrs. Wren found her asleep at the desk and closed the ledger. "I can finish it," Elinor protested. "I know. It must be done before morning. Then I shall do half." Elinor opened her mouth to refuse. Mrs. Wren waited. "Thank you," Elinor said. Receiving help without surrendering authority felt like learning a new language. Her first letter from Cecily arrived after 10 days. "Father is angry," she wrote. "I am frightened of him. Yesterday I disagreed with him and remained in the room." Elinor pressed the page to her heart. There was no letter from Marcus. Elinor told herself this was what she had required. She built routines, interviewed prospective residents, and learned York streets. Yet each time the post arrived, she felt the absence before she saw it. 3 weeks after her arrival, a letter bearing the Ravensmere seal appeared. It contained no poetry and no plea. "I nearly wrote to ask whether you had arrived safely. Then I remembered that concern does not entitle me to an answer. So I shall ask something smaller. What does York look like from your window?" Elinor carried the letter upstairs. From her window she could see wet rooftops, a narrow strip of garden, laundry moving in the wind, and a coal merchant losing an argument with Mrs. Wren. She answered that evening. "A girl corrected my arithmetic today. She wrote. She was right and very pleased by it. York looks like wet roofs, smoking chimneys, and women discovering they are not obliged to apologize for knowing the answer." His reply came 5 days later. "Then I have been educated by the wrong sort of men. At Ravensmere, accuracy has traditionally been treated as a form of disloyalty." Elinor laughed aloud in an empty room. The next letter was less polished. Weller's roof failed again. "I nearly sent my own men before remembering that the cottage is his home. Not my lesson in efficiency. I asked whom he trusted. He chose a carpenter I would not have chosen. The repair is imperfect. The choice is his. I find I can survive both facts." Elinor read that passage twice before answering. An imperfect choice belongs more honestly to a person than a perfect life arranged by someone else. A week later, Marcus wrote only 4 lines. "The house is quieter without you. I do not mean less efficient. I mean quieter. I have spent years mistaking those 2 losses for the same thing." Elinor carried the page all day before she replied. "I do not yet know what to do with a man who tells me what he chose not to do." His answer returned by the next post. "You need do nothing. I wanted you to know that I remembered." Winter pressed white against the windows. Their letters crossed between York and Ravensmere without promises, each one leaving room for an unanswered question. At last, Elinor wrote, "I miss being disagreed with by someone who has finally learned to listen." Marcus replied, "I shall try not to become agreeable merely to win an invitation." Elinor dipped her pen. That was not an invitation. She waited, then added 2 final words. "Not yet." In March, Elinor wrote, "The first crocuses have appeared beside the back wall. Mrs. Wren insists they are white. I say pale lavender. You may settle the dispute if you happen to be in York next Thursday." Marcus arrived on Thursday. He came without an entourage. Although his rank could not be entirely concealed from the servants at the inn, Elinor saw him from the front parlour as he crossed the street beneath a grey sky. Her heart recognized him before caution could speak. "Mrs. Wren opened the door. 'The Duke of Ravensmere,' he said. "We had guessed," she replied. "You are too solemn for a tradesman and too well dressed for a plasterer." She led him to the parlour, where Elinor stood beside the window. For several moments, they only looked at one another. Marcus seemed both familiar and newly uncertain. At Alderwick, every room had given him a role. Here, he was merely a man invited into a life that had begun without him. "You came," Elinor said. "You asked. That has not always stopped you from doing something else. I have acquired a painful respect for exact instructions." She smiled. He looked around the room. The mismatched chairs, fresh plaster near the ceiling, account books on the desk, and 3 women arguing cheerfully over the correct placement of a lamp. "May I see the life you chose?" he asked. "Not. When will you leave it?" "Not. How can it be fitted around Ravensmere?" Elinor showed him everything. She showed him her room, smaller than her chamber at Alderwick, and more completely hers. She showed him the resident's private parlour, where no man entered without invitation. She showed him the ledger in which her name appeared beside Mrs. Wren's as an equal partner. Finally, she took him into the garden, where the disputed crocuses grew beneath the wall. "Lavender," Marcus said. "You have not looked closely. I travelled 4 hours to agree with you. Do not make the sacrifice meaningless." She laughed, and the last formality between them loosened. Marcus became serious. "I will return to Ravensmere tomorrow." Elinor's smile faded. "I did not come to carry you back. I came because you invited me, and because I wished to know the answer to every question I failed to ask. Have you learned it?" "Only the beginning." He looked at the house. "You love work that creates room for people without claiming their decisions. You read in the morning before anyone wakes. You are frightened of becoming necessary because you do not yet trust that anyone will remain when you are not. You dislike sweet tea, dishonest invoices, and being thanked publicly for sacrifices you were never asked whether you wished to make." Elinor could not speak. "You also love me," he said. "But that fact gives me no right to determine what follows." "And what do you want to follow?" "A life in which neither of us disappears." She studied him. "If I marry, my capital remains invested here. My name remains on the partnership. I will spend part of every year in York. I will not manage Ravensmere because you find responsibility tiring. And I will not become the answer to every demand your family has postponed." "Agreed," you answered quickly. "I have considered the terms for 3 months. There will be other terms. Then we shall discuss them. Not 6 romantic promises made in a garden and forgotten after the wedding." "Written provisions," he said. "Independent counsel. Your capital protected. Your partnership recognized." Elinor raised an eyebrow. "You have become alarmingly teachable. Necessity is an excellent tutor." The word hung between them. Marcus corrected himself. "No, not necessity. Loss." He did not kneel. He did not produce the Ravensmere ring. That ring had belonged to a bargain neither sister wanted. He held out an empty hand. "I am not asking what you will surrender," he said. "I am asking what we might build without either of us disappearing." Elinor looked at his hand. Once, she had believed happiness would begin when someone finally recognized how indispensable she was. Then she had believed freedom required never being needed at all. Both beliefs had made love a kind of labor. She placed her hand in his. "Come inside," she said. "Mrs. Wren will want to examine your intentions. I have faced Parliament with less apprehension. You should—" They entered the house together. They married the following autumn, after agreements had been drafted, questioned, revised, and signed. Elinor retained her investment and spent each spring in York. Marcus learned to manage Ravensmere without turning his wife into its unpaid conscience. When he asked for her judgment, he also accepted that she might decline to give it. Cecily did not marry quickly. She remained at Alderwick long enough to discover what she liked when no one rewarded her for agreeing. 3 years later, she chose a man who first met her during an argument and admired that she did not yield. Mr. Harcourt never entirely understood why his daughters could not have become free more quietly. He resented the closed rooms, the empty stable, and every account placed before him. He did not become a different man, but Cecily controlled her own correspondence. No decision was made in her name without her presence, and her father knocked now, because the door no longer opened merely because he wished it to. The house in York flourished. Its front door opened to women who needed neither rescue nor permission, only a safe place from which to choose what came next. Above Elinor's desk hung no portrait of Ravensmere and no symbol of rank. There was only the old coach ticket, framed beneath glass. It reminded her of the morning she had left the first man who truly loved her, and of the fact that he had loved her enough to let the coach depart. Elinor had once believed love would arrive when someone finally understood how indispensable she was. She had been wrong. Love arrived when she was free to leave, and he made no cage of the open door.